Thank you for joining us for our AgriPulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by AgriPulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. I want to start off this week with the big news that's supposedly come out of Washington through the month of September, and that is a continuing resolution, something that would avoid a government shutdown. Phil saw a little bit of action on it this week, but I think a little bit maybe overstating it.
Yeah, well, let's say progress, maybe overstating it. October 1st, a week from Saturday, is the first day of the new fiscal year, fiscal 2017. Congress has not passed, enacted any of its appropriations bills for the agencies to keep the government in operation when the new fiscal year starts, and so they have to pass what's called a continuing resolution. Essentially, we'll keep spending at the current levels through the date they're talking about is December the 9th. That's after the election. The idea is that they can then pass, negotiate and then pass either in small batches or in one large batch, or omnibus we call it, all of these spending bills.
And saw Senator McConnell move a bill through the Senate just yesterday, but it doesn't look to have, it looks to be kind of engendering some Democratic opposition.
Right, well the Senate is going first on this. The Senate needs 60 votes to move it, so they need Democratic support. The negotiations have been going on. Finally, Senator McConnell, as he mentioned, started to ratchet up pressure on the Democrats. He finally released a version of the CR, the continuing resolution, that includes not only funding for the government, but also includes funding for combating the Zika virus, also some flood relief. What it doesn't have, and Democrats are upset about, is that it doesn't include any money for the drinking water issues in Flint, Michigan. And so Democrats promptly, including Debbie Stabenow, who's the ranking Democrat on the Senate Agriculture Committee, somebody very familiar to our viewers, was one of the first to get on the Hill, get on the Senate floor, because it's her home state. Huge issue that she's been working on all year.
So really nothing to report on a CR being done in either chamber this week. We'll be sure to keep you up to date on that as the news progresses. There.
One more week.
One more week. Yeah. So the time is kind of running.
Hopefully
short
next week we're sitting here. We'll be talking about the CR having passed.
Okay. And want to stay within the Senate for this next little bit here. As we mentioned last week, there was going to be a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee on some mergers in the seed and chemical industries. That hearing happened on Tuesday. AgriPulse was there covering it. Phil was in attendance at the hearing, and Phil basically saw a lot of action on a lot of these companies kind of defending these mergers as methods to kind of promote innovation within their companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of skepticism, I would say. I mean, bipartisan, really. I mean, some of the toughest questioning actually came from Mike Lee, a very conservative senator from Utah, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we all know that the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley from Iowa, has long been skeptical of consolidation and lack of competition in agriculture. Has been fighting with the meat industry for many years, and so there was certainly a skeptical, critical tone from most members of the committee. Especially on the Democratic side, but again, as I said, including on the Republican side, questioning these companies about, I think the major concern that they were raising, the members were raising, was about input costs, what the consolidation of these seed and chemical companies would do in terms of chemical costs. But there were also some other issues that came up, particularly involving Syngenta's acquisition by ChemChina.
And so there was also some producer input at that hearing as well, testimony from American Farm Bureau Federation, National Corn Growers Association, and the National Farmers Union. And Phil, what really stood out for you from the comments and from the testimony that was given by these producer groups?
Well, certainly, I think again they did cite some concern. There was certainly the National Farmers Union was the most critical, the most concerned. They really don't see any good coming out of these consolidations. The Farm Bureau was a little more nuanced. Bob Young, the chief economist there, he was saying. Prefaced a lot of his remarks saying he could understand. He put emphasis on it. This was a result. The fact that these companies were merging had a lot to do with the downturn, the slump in commodity prices, and these companies are doing what companies do, is look for efficiencies. So he tended to emphasize that. Also, though, said there were concerns, particularly the fact that all of these were happening at the same time. 3 major mergers plus the fertilizer industry merger, which was really not a part of this hearing. And then National Corn Growers, Chris Novak from the National Corn Growers Association is really speaking for both the corn growers and the American Soybean Association. He said they had analyzed the impact of at least the DuPont-Dow merger. They hadn't gotten to Bayer-Monsanto, which of course is the most recently one announced. But didn't think that it would fundamentally undermine, that's the way he put it, the corn seed market. And so they were not, the board was not coming out against it. Again, talking about the Dow-DuPont merger. So that was his concern. Oh, the other issue I think we should point out, and this goes back to the Syngenta ChemChina combination. He again pointed out that he thought that could really go both ways. One of the big concerns there is, or one of the big concerns, or actually a couple of them, but one of the big concerns there with Syngenta is that China might become even less transparent in its approval of new biotech traits if in fact it owns, essentially the state-owned enterprise, ChemChina, owns one of the major seed companies, Syngenta. Now, Erica Fierwald, who's the CEO of Syngenta, was testifying at the hearing. He insisted that no, it'll be the other way around, that in fact, China, by having a financial stake in Syngenta, in biotechnology itself, will be even more transparent and would, in fact, accelerate its approvals of biotech seeds. So that was, again, Chris Novak of the corn growers said, still don't know, it could go either way. Eric Fierwald from Syngenta saying, no, this is going to be good for the biotech industry broadly.
So a lot of interesting commentary came out of that hearing, and if you've got a minute, I'd encourage you to go to agripulse.com and read Phil's write-up of the hearing. A lot of interesting points raised there, and that's certainly something to follow here in these next couple of months as those mergers go through regulatory approval here in the United States. I want to wrap up this week with something that happened here just earlier this week. News that China was opening itself up to imports of U.S. beef. That's going to be the first time that that's happened since the infamous cow that stole Christmas a number of years ago, and there was a BSE scare in, I believe it was Washington State. It was Pacific Northwest, and I believe it was Washington State.
Yeah, in December 2003, the Chinese market's been closed ever since then. It's still, there's still some things to work to. They have to, the two countries, China and the U.S., USDA will obviously be involved in this, negotiating specific conditions under which beef can be shipped to China, but they have officially formally lifted the ban, so now those discussions can go forward.
Got to imagine there were a lot of celebratory stakes to be had when that news was announced. That's a pretty big market, and one that the U.S. beef industry has been looking to get into for quite some time. But I think that's going to do it for the news out of AgriPulse Communications this week. I appreciate you stopping by and watching our Washington Week in Review. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.